Well, hello everyone. My name is Rob Holler. I'm here with the Oak and Acorn Podcast. Today joining me is Kim High, who is the Chief Interpreter for the Toledo Metroparks. We're out here at Campbell Prairie in Oak Opening. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, you're welcome. And I can't wait to tell you more about Campbell Prairie and Oak Openings because it's such a special place. So I do want to say that you and your audience may have heard of a Campbell Prairie that's owned by the state that's also in the Oak Openings right over on Crissy Road. But this Campbell Prairie is right in Oak Openings Preserve.
Awesome.
And so it's right at the end of the bicycle trail that connects right behind the Oak Openings Lodge. It's in a public place. You can come and walk here. And there isn't a season out here that isn't beautiful. So
that's amazing. Yeah, I had no idea this was here. So thank you so much for showing this to me.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get started with all of this, maybe you can share a little bit about yourself, who
Sure.
you are, how you got to be here,
Okay.
why you're here.
Well, I am here because I'm here at the Metroparks because my parents were both teachers. And so we had June, July, and August off. And what that meant was June, July, and August, we'd spend all the time in nature. And so very early in my growing up, I learned to really love nature. And so when I went into college, I worked in outdoor education and natural resource management. And then a lot of people said, "Oh, Kimmy, you're just learning how to pump up volleyballs," which I didn't agree with at all. And today we don't feel that way. We have much more of a reverence. But I went and got a master's in English also because I wanted to have something to fall back on in teaching, and I knew I was a good teacher. My dad was an English teacher. My mom was a music teacher. So I knew that I wanted to do something teaching favorite outdoors, second maybe English or something like that. And I got hired at the Metroparks, right out of the gate. I got so lucky. It was a little part-time job. $3.80 an hour. This was 1983, so, and I was supposed to go away in the summer because they only needed me to lead nature walks for kids. So I was to lead nature walks and then go and figure out what else I was going to do in the summer months, and then come back and lead nature walks in the fall. And I thought I was on cloud nine. I was so happy to do it. I mean, over 100 people applied for that job, and I got it.
Oh,
and
wow.
I mean,
That's
so it
crazy.
doesn't sound like much, but it was so important to me. And then what happened is I never left because little things fell into place. They needed somebody that summer in order to host an art exhibit, which Roger Torrey Peterson prints were in, Roger Torrey Peterson is the Peterson's guides to all of those natural places, to birds, to flowers. Peterson's guides are to everything. And so we had an exhibit in the Meadowbrook Hall with that. And then in the following November, the levy passed. And so I was hired permanent part-time. And then eventually I just kept loving it so much that I got hired full-time in 1986. So
Awesome.
That's how I got here.
Very
But I
good.
thank my parents. They were both teachers.
That's very cool. That's very cool. So I think I read in your bio that you enjoyed, obviously, hiking, being outdoors, no surprise there.
No.
And you also enjoy music?
I do
Did
very
that come
much.
from your mother?
Yeah, my mom was a music teacher, so we were in the choirs at the church, and we'd go to her musicals every year. And I love the music of the woods too. I'm very auditory, so I like to teach people bird calls. I like to hoot like owls, like ooh, 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 like that, or maybe whistle like a little tufted titmouse, like that,
Wow.
or chickadee. And I like to teach kids how to do that.
That's
That's a
so fun.
chickadee, by the way.
Okay.
So yeah, my mom had a huge influence in me in terms of the music, not just the music of our art, but the music of the whole natural area.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So Kim, tell me a little bit about, you were sharing with me before, What makes this area, this prairie area and oak opening so unique?
Yes, I love to talk about that because we often think of natural areas as kind of deep woods, but that's not at all what the oak openings was, even hundreds of years ago prior to settlement. What the oak openings is it's this ribbon of sand, and it's 125 miles long. The oak openings region goes all the way north of Detroit, Troy, Michigan.
Wow.
But in Ohio, we are the primary Metroparks, is the primary landholders, along with the Nature Conservancy and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. But this ribbon of sand goes into Fulton County, and what it creates on it, because of the way the water table is so variable underneath, so sometimes there's standing water and sometimes there's sand, sometimes there's 30 feet of sand, and sometimes there's water saturated all the way up. But because it is such a variable water table, not that many things really evolved to grow on it, but the things that did evolve to grow on it were incredibly rare species. So we call it the oak openings because what would come up in this area prior to settlement were literally oaks and then openings. And the openings would be these huge prairies similar to this Campbell Prairie. And I mean, people got lost in the prairies. Cattle would get lost in the prairies. And the prairies had all these little rare things that had eked out their existence living among the sand and the difficult water table for most species.
Yeah.
And fire. There was actually fire. And they eked out their existence liking fire. And so you say, what? Where did the fire come from? Well, fire occurred naturally here a lot, because it would get really dry certain seasons and it would burn. But our native people that lived in this area also burned, and they burned to hunt bison. So there were bison here.
Wow.
That's another one that you go, what? What do you mean bison?
Wow.
But what native people would do, according to some journal entries, is they'd burn 3 sides to a big field like this, and the bison would all flush one way, and then that's how they would hunt the bison.
Wow.
The other thing that would happen would be that they would burn to create and navigate trails through the tall prairies and things. So we know that about what was here before any kind of settlement at all. We know that from the indigenous people that were here. And Walpole Island up in north of Detroit has taught us a lot about the prairies of this area and the native people of the area. Walpole Island is a First Nation part on the Detroit River. It's an island that's a First Nation Ojibwe place that you can learn so much from people that have been here like since the beginning of a long, long time.
That's incredible. Yeah. It's so interesting too, just to hear that there were bison here before.
Yeah.
And now they're not.
Yeah, woodland bison.
So maybe you can settle something, a discussion I had with a family discussion we had about our area and bears. What is the likelihood that there would ever be a bear in this area?
Believe it or not, it's more southern Ohio. Bear are endangered in Ohio, but it's possible that a bear would show up because they roam. There have been a few records here and there, but we don't have any populations of bear.
Nothing normally
that would be black bear all the time too.
Very good.
So black bear, and it's really more southern Ohio, but there are populations not too far in Michigan and in some other places, so we would never say never.
Interesting.
The same is true of bobcat, although we might have more bobcat.
Yeah.
We actually had a bobcat, but we had one get hit on Central Avenue right by Secor Metro Park.
Wow.
And that was in 2014.
Yeah.
So every now and then something like that happens, and we're not going to say absolutely not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Very interesting. Very interesting. So do you have a favorite, favorite animal?
Oh my gosh.
Favorite tree?
Yeah,
favorite plant? Go for it.
Okay, so I always say that my favorite whatever in nature, my favorite park is the one I'm standing in at the moment. My favorite plant is the one that I'm standing by, so I can tell you about this one. My favorite bird is whichever one I'm looking at. I'm absolutely fickle about it. I tend to resonate with American goldfinches for birds just because I love that yellow and black. They're beautiful yellow with this black wing and white. Yeah, they're very pretty, and they're here year-round. They do change into a more greenish color in the winter, but they're just a beautiful little bird. Plant. This is a hairy mountain mint. Yeah, it doesn't have a really very attractive name, but it's got little hairs on it, and it's got a square stem because it's a mint. And this is an endangered species in Ohio. And yet, in the oak openings region, we count literally thousands of them every year with our rare plant monitoring on the years that we count them.
Wow.
There's so many that sometimes you have to do a different kind of protocol than counting them all, because it just takes forever. But this little mint, if I break off, and I'm not hurting this by holding it, the seeds have already dropped out, but there's lots of it right here in our Campbell Prairie. We would never want to pick generally, and we always encourage our visitors not to pick, but I'm holding this just to show you. And so if you take that and smell it, here, I'll let you smell it.
Sure.
It is like a mint Girl Scout cookie. It's the best mint Girl Scout cookie.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, I love that smell. So that's called Hairy Mountain Mint. One of my favorite trees. Of course, oak trees are a favorite. But I also like sassafras trees an awful lot because they're very colorful, and they're very common in the oak openings. So that's another one. So this is the food plant. Our endangered Karner blue butterflies only eat this blue lupin. That's what they call obligate.
Okay.
Like they have to eat it as caterpillars. They have to eat it to live.
Interesting.
So we planted so much lupin in our prairie areas of the oak openings to bring back Karner blue, and we still are not, like I think in 2014 there were 2
Oh, wow.
Karner blue, but we haven't found Karner blue here in a while, but they are in the oak openings corridor, which means they're in the Kitty Todd Preserve and the Nature Conservancy, and the goal to plant lupin is not lost just because you don't have the Karner blue.
Yeah.
Because you get a host of all these other things, and when you have a federally endangered species that you're trying to protect, you wind up protecting this whole ecosystem too.
Yeah.
Which is a globally rare ecosystem.
Yeah. You had to live out here for a month. Mm-hmm. How well would you do?
Oh, I think I'd do just fine because I wouldn't be so worried about what I eat. I'm actually an herbalist too. Now, here's the problem. If we're in oak openings, I don't want to pick anything or take anything. But you would be surprised what you can put in your own yard that becomes extremely nutritious. And so I wouldn't be too afraid of surviving in the Toledo area because of what I know about the plants and animals and uses of things here. It's amazing. A stinging nettle, which kids remember it because it's if you walk through it in a floodplain and you rub your legs on it, it causes an itch. And they go, and they itch and scratch, and it goes away after 10 minutes or so, but it just is horrible if you're in shorts. But you can eat it.
Interesting.
Yes, and I'm not even afraid to say that to everybody. You have to heat it, and then all that sting goes away. And once you heat it, it becomes a real nutritive. It's actually good for you. It's really good for lowering inflammation. Yeah, and so you can listen. You can do 2 or 1 things. You can go to the health food store and buy nettle leaf tea. That's really good for inflammation. But then with your teas that you buy at the store, you're going to have a shelf life, and it's not going to be as poor. Or you can get to know it because it lives right here in your home. It's a plant that's here everywhere. You can get to know it, grow some yourself, and my gosh, you can cook it up like you cook spinach and eat it with butter, and it's delicious.
That's awesome.
Okay, that's just one example of many, many, many plants that you can do amazing things with.
So you would probably win this contest.
Well, I wouldn't be very good at those games. And I do think Metroparks in the future is going to come up with some survivor-oriented fun game activity things for the public.
That's so great.
Yeah, we like that show. I've always been a fan of Survivor. My son and I, he's 26 now, but we used to watch it when he was growing up. So we always have kind of fun talking about Survivor.
Awesome. Kim, this has been so informative, absolutely wonderful. Is there anything else you want to share today?
No, I would just encourage people in Toledo, especially to say you're in the right place. Get to know it. Sometimes it's not the ocean and it's not the mountains and it's not this big spectacular, I have to be here. But if you give yourself a little bit of time in any of those parks that I mentioned or any of our natural areas, I think you will be pleasantly surprised at how touched you feel and what a sense of place you begin to have for where you live.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.